So another affirmation about Thomas Aquinas' thought is this idea of the defense of rationalistic um, theories. Let's put it this way. Maybe I should change my sentence. It's incredible that we can classify Thomas Aquinas as a humanist and as a rationalist. But it is incredible to do so because humanism and rationalism don't understand the human and don't understand the rationality. Chesterton will play with the words as he always does, but let's understand humanism as it is usually understood. Of course, oversimplifying the term. The idea is humanism is the belief in human, right? Let's simplify it this way. So humans can reach the truth. Humans have access to the truth. Therefore, we don't need God, right? There is this very famous quote by Alexander Pope that is, presume not God to skin. The proper study of man is mankind, something like that. Well, so humans have access to the truth. We don't need God, right? Now, when Thomas Aquinas, let's say, gets the term, of course he doesn't. He doesn't, but Chesterton does it for him, right? And Chesterton says, well, Thomas Aquinas, yes, Thomas Aquinas is a humanist because he says, yes, we have access to the truth. Yes, we have, uh, we are extremely valuable. Yes, we can find by ourselves, but we can find by ourselves through looking at the truth. And looking at the truth is looking at reality. And reality is the expression of God, right? So, as a matter of fact, humanism understood as, as usually it is understood, and then it's a problem. It's just an incomplete theory, right? About rationalism. Well, we don't need revelation. We don't need um, dogmas because we should trust our reason. So we should be rational. Thomas Aquinas would say, yes, we should be rational. And if we go on this road of being rational, we are going to reach the point that we will understand many truths from God. Remember, it's not by faith, but by reason that Thomas Aquinas proves God exists. Right? On that note, thinking about the rationalism of Thomas Aquinas, it's very interesting. First, I'll read a part here of Chesterton's text, and then I'll read something by Thomas Aquinas. Um, his argument for revelation is not in the least an argument against reason. On the contrary, he seems inclined to admit that truth could be reached by a rational process, if only it were rational enough and also long enough. Uh, right in the introduction to the Summa, uh, we have the following passage. Even concerning what human reason can investigate about God, it was necessary that men also be instructed through divine revelation. So Thomas Aquinas is saying, look, of course, there are some some truths that are impossible for us to understand, and in that sense, it's the limit of his rationalism. but we can understand a lot just by reason. But there's a problem. Uh, Even those things we can discover by reason, it's better than with this. We have revelation. Why? Continuing. Indeed, the truth about God, when sought by human reason alone, would reach only a few after much time and filled with errors. In other words, it's not everybody in Greece that can be a Plato or an Aristotle or Socrates, right? You have a whole structure, the whole society to try to support the philosophers. And even among the philosophers, just some of them were able to, three of them were able to get to that level. So the idea is if we just we put this responsibility, discovering the truth is going to save your soul, and we just leave it to humans, well, how many people would have the time and the capacity to investigate, to use so much reason to get to those higher truths, right? Very few. So then we understand again. Indeed, the truth about God, when sought by human reason alone, would reach only a few people after they studied a lot their whole lives, after much time. And even so, even in studying their whole lives, even having all the time in the world, even being the most genius people in the world, they would be filled with errors. By the way, that's what happens. Well, I don't know, when you look at Foucault. Foucault is a genius. The guy is very intelligent, right? But his philosophy is filled with errors. So it's logical, using the divine logic, let's put it this way, that we can't leave man's salvation to their capacity and to their reason. All right, it's too dangerous. So they need a shorter, path. So they need grace. They need revelation, right? And then we continue. However, the knowledge of this truth is essential for man's salvation, which is found in God. Thus, so that salvation might reach men more easily and more securely, it was necessary for them to be instructed about God through divine revelation, right? And then we go again to Chesterton's sentence. He is saying that Thomas Aquinas seems to be inclined to admit that truth could be reached by rational process, if only it were rational enough, if the person were, let's say, intelligent enough, let's put it this way, had time enough, and, you know, could dedicate completely to the search of truth. But people can't, right? People have to work, you know. Uh, yeah, it's I don't know the percentage of people who can be philosophers in our society, right? So that's the point there.